Hi there! Thanks so much for tuning into our education video this week. My name is Maggie.
My name is Amelia.
And we are the educators here at Hawks Aloft. So today we are launching our nesting discussions by talking about egg laying and incubation. Here to help me focus on egg laying is our female Merlin, Lady Kiki. Kiki came to Hawks Aloft in 2014, and she has a left wing amputation that causes her to be non-releasable. So Kiki and I are going to be focusing in on a species that's much bigger than Merlins, which are the red-tailed hawks. So here we have some examples of different eggs. We have, from smallest to greatest, we have some chicken eggs. We have some Swainson's hawk eggs, and then we have some red-tailed hawk eggs. And I'll hold those up so you can see the size differences. This is our red-tailed hawk in my right hand, and this is a chicken egg in my left hand. And then this is the Swainson's hawk egg versus the red-tailed hawk egg. So you can tell that the red-tailed hawk eggs are the biggest of all these three eggs. And Amelia will talk a little bit more in depth about the egg process itself in just a minute. So you might be wondering, why do we have Swainson's hawk eggs and red-tailed hawk eggs? Well, it's because that every single spring, our very own red-tailed hawk, Jamaica, lays an egg, or 3, or sometimes even 4 maybe. That's because she is reacting to the changes in the season. So birds like Jamaica, even though she's older and that she lives in captivity, is still triggered to start laying eggs in springtime. So why is that? Bird species, many of them at least, have a reproductive system that only allows them to breed during the springtime. That's because they are reacting to those hormonal changes caused by the changes in photoperiod. Photoperiod is the amount of light that an animal is exposed to in a 24-hour period. So when it's springtime, the days grow longer and the nights grow shorter. So their bodies still react to that even if they are in captivity. So Jamaica lays her eggs every single spring, even though she's in captivity, because her hormones are saying it's time for babies. So even though they're not fertilized eggs, she still lays them. So birds that live near the equator, where the days don't change in length, they have different cues that causes that hormonal change. For example, the zebra finches react to large amounts of rainfall. So they have a rainy season and a dry season, and their cues are when it rains a bunch. That's when their hormonal changes start to occur. So springtime is the best time to lay eggs as a bird because it's when the food supply increases dramatically. And it also offers the longest length of time away from winter. So birds have to lay their eggs, raise their young, and feed themselves all in that time. So it is a very energy consuming thing to be a parent, even as a bird. If there are severe shortages of food, or maybe there's a drought or other limiting factors, many species of raptors will opt to not reproduce that year, as it's for their own individual safety and well-being. So a red-tailed hawk clutch, like this one that you're seeing here, usually has 1 to 4 eggs in it, like these 3 here. Last year, these are eggs from last year that Jamaica laid, and she laid those 3 eggs. Occasionally, there have been recorded red-tailed hawk clutches up to 5 eggs. Red-tailed hawks typically lay an egg every 2 to 3 days until their clutch is complete. And they start incubating as soon as that first egg is laid. Both red-tailed hawk parents will take turns incubating, but the female usually takes the lead role on that. And female red-tailed hawks will develop a brood patch, which is a bald patch of feathers while incubating their eggs. The brood patch of the featherless skin allows for the eggs to be better insulated because feathers do a really good job holding all the bird's heat into its own body rather than letting that heat go, so that's why they develop a brood patch. So you can think of it as a heating pad or a hot water bottle for those eggs. The eggs that are laid first have a head start, and so they will hatch sooner than the ones that are laid a couple days later, but sometimes that very first egg might not hatch at all because it wasn't fertilized or because the embryo didn't develop properly. So we can go ahead and move to Amelia to talk about what's actually going on in that egg. Let's grab my bird. A little switcheroo.
All right, thank you so much, Maggie. So joining me is Commodore, our male Swainson's hawk. We affectionately call him Commie for short. Commodore joined us because he has a wing injury, possibly from being hit by a car. And he came to us in 2004, and he was already an adult. Because he had spent some time in the wild, he tends to be a little warier around humans than some of our other birds who might have come in at a younger age, because he had time to learn that humans were scary in the wild. So he lives with a female Swainson's hawk named Aries, and together they make excellent foster parents for orphaned baby Swainson's hawks every year. He also likes to vocalize sometimes, which is a really great teaching moment, so just be on the lookout for that in case he does it during the video. Now, an egg is a really interesting thing to think about. If you've ever eaten an egg, you will know that there is a white part and there is a yolk. So the white part is called the albumin and the yellow part is called the yolk. And together with some specialized membranes, an egg contains everything that they need in order to raise or to build a chick, basically. Now, of course, you know that the eggs that you eat are usually unfertilized, but if the egg is fertilized, it will have a embryo inside of the yolk. So the embryo will be part of the yolk, and some of the yolk and some of the white contain nutrients for that growing embryo to eat. The specialized membranes shrink away from the egg when the egg is laid and create an air sac or a pocket of air for the birds to get oxygen from. And when the baby bird is breathing out carbon dioxide, it escapes through tiny pores in the shell of the egg. Those tiny pores are also important because they help to keep the egg moist and keep it from losing too much moisture. The egg is also covered in a layer called a cuticle that helps to prevent bacteria and dust from getting inside of the egg. And if bacteria does get inside the egg, the white of the egg contains hundreds of antimicrobial proteins that will keep any bacteria from getting into the chick. The white also provides nutrients, water for the growing chick, and it also provides kind of a cushion for the bird inside of the egg. Now, bird eggs generally take about 21 days to hatch, but in a raptor species, they can take up to 30 days to hatch, or even longer in some. So during the first week, the first thing that starts to develop inside of the egg are the eyes of the chick. And then they start to develop a head and a neck. By week 2, they start to develop some claws or nails and their beak. They develop what's called an egg tooth, which is a tiny pointed thing on their beak that helps them to hatch later on. And then finally, they start to develop a soft layer of downy feathers during the last week of developing inside the egg. When it comes time to hatch, they have to use that egg tooth to break open the air sac so they can have enough oxygen to help them to break out of the egg. Then they start to poke around the shell to find a weak spot. And by the time they're ready to hatch, the calcium carbonate that made up that hard shell has become weaker because they've used that calcium to build their skeleton. So they find a weak spot and they poke at that with their egg tooth, and it can take between 12 to 18 hours to fully emerge from an egg. When they come out, they're covered in a soft down and a little bit of slime, so mom keeps them warm and helps them to dry out quickly in the wild. And then they will start to grow thicker feathers for more protection later on. So I learned so much about eggs doing this presentation, and it was really interesting to hear all about how a bird develops inside of the egg. Let us know if you have any questions. You can leave them on our Facebook page, or any suggestions for future videos. We want to thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.